Hey folks, welcome to the E-commerce Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Gaffin, Director of Digital Product Strategy here at Common Thread Collective. And I'm joined, after having seen him in person, by Mr. Taylor Holiday, our CEO here at Common Thread. How are you doing, man?
Doing well. Yeah, I've got my my social time on my Whoop was at an all-time high last week. You know, really racking up some good social hours out with the humans.
There's a social hours thing on Whoop?
Well, like I do the journal at the end of each day where I fill out a bunch of qualitative questions.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them is like, were you socially fulfilled today? Some version like that. And then like, how many hours did you spend socializing, to understand like how that relates to my general well-being? So I was, just really maxing out the extrovert this last week.
If you've been paying attention to the news, you've probably seen that costs are going up everywhere, and consumer expectations are similarly going up. For fast-growing e-commerce brands, that means increased fulfillment fees, parcel costs, and squeezed margins. With the changes to global trade, brands are seeing a massive spike of 15 to 35%, and with the changes to USPS Parcel Select, delivery costs could balloon well beyond 25%. In order for your brand to survive, you will need a scalable commerce enablement provider who can adapt to these changing markets and help you deliver the best consumer experience at scale. That's precisely what Stored does every day for their partners. In 2024, Stored saved $130 million on parcel fees for its customers, and after powering nearly 1% of all U.S. online Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales, they have the infrastructure and integrated technology to help you grow in 2025 and beyond, no matter how many disruptions occur. Don't just take my word for it. You can experience it for yourself. They've just rolled out an in-depth mystery shopping report. This report compares your brand against two competitors and presents you with real, actionable insights based on industry benchmarks. To request your free report, go to stored.link/mystery. That's STORD.link/mystery. Take the mystery out of your consumer experience with Stored. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I felt the same way. It's just like being amongst people is like kind of reminds you that that's sort of what you're supposed to be doing as a human being. My takeaway from my Whoop strap was that when I went golfing with everybody on Thursday, it told me I burned 1,800 calories, which can't be right because I was driving the cart the whole time. But
Well, I mean, there's a lot. You took a lot of swings, though. In fairness,
that's true. That's true. I won't share what I shot in that round, but let's just say it's
Well, you burned a lot of calories. I think you did share enough. You've shared enough.
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. Well, I'll just say, like, I lost both complimentary sleeves of balls almost immediately, and in the walking around and searching and hacking down the fairway, I may well have burned 1,800 calories. But
it is kind of crazy, though. Like, one of my reflections. Sorry, we're going to jump into this more formally, but just right off the bat was like, we used to do this every day, and that's kind of crazy how much we lost. It's still kind of one of those things I don't think we'll ever really understand. Is that like that was our life every day, seeing each other, hanging out, having little moments, going to lunch, joking around, and that is just so gone. And it's like when you get back together, you realize how like it was a very rich, fulfilling part of this experience that you do miss on these Zoom boxes.
No, totally. The quantitative, it's hard to quantify like what that impact is, but the qualitative experience of it is so powerful that it's just clear that there's something there. I mean, definitely like the ability to brainstorm creative. I mean, that's a cliche, but like getting in a room with people and coming up with new ideas and direction, that type of thing is so clearly better in those in-person.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, I think that's like a good segue into what we want to talk about today, which at this point, you guys will probably have watched Taylor's speech at our client summit over last week, which is, of course, the reason we were all in person together. And so what we wanted to do is kind of distill some takeaways from that. And I think the first one that we want to talk about is directly related to this observation around being in person, which is that there is value to, as a client, visiting your vendors in person, and of course, us as an agency, vice versa, getting that FaceTime, getting that sort of like that type of experience that you have with your coworkers sometimes, let's say if you're in office or you're going to meeting, getting that experience with your clients and vendors. So speak to that a little bit, Taylor.
Yeah, so these are sort of cliche tropes, but these things tend to exist like that for a reason. There may be another word for them is wisdom, is that in a meeting every week with a client and a vendor, there's a very specific context for that relationship. It's logistical, it's an evaluation, it's this it's a very you come in with a disposition that you're either on the defensive or you're talking very process oriented and logistics. It is not very relational. It just isn't. And if that's the only form of relational fabric that gets built, then the relationship, I think, has a certain tension that underpins it. At least that's what I've heard from other people and my personal experience in it. And what I've found is that this event, so we have a client summit where we bring as many clients as can make it. We had people from Australia, Canada, Vermont, Nebraska, Oregon, literally all over the world came and flew in to hang out with us this past week. And what I found is that it just creates a very different context. So we open with like a mini 9-hole golf course and drinks on the top of this thing at this cool hotel overlooking the ocean. And right away, you're asking people to do something that's going to be awkward and they're going to look stupid playing golf, most of us, right? You're going to have a couple of drinks and relax. And all of a sudden, you're setting the expectation that this is not our normal Zoom weekly performance evaluation thing. This is like much more human than that. And what I found that unlocks is that I get the truth of you, who you are, what you care about, and your relationship to me and what's been frustrating that you've disliked or liked way more clearly than I do almost anywhere else. You're just suddenly, I'm saying you as if I'm speaking to you, potential customers or customers. You're way more honest and it's really helpful. And all of a sudden I get to know you in a way that allows me to think about how I might better form my service to your desires. And there's a lot of talk in our industry about going to visit your manufacturer and building relationship for the sake of negotiating a better deal or building humanity. But like that is true with every vendor that you have. And an agency contract is probably one of the bigger line items for you. I would go do it. Go visit them in person. And if you're an agency, listen, create spaces for people to visit you in person. There's just something that you can create in that setting alone that I don't think you can actually create on a Zoom call alone.
Yeah. And it's difficult to quantify, but one thing that I've noticed in the moments when I've been able to have like sort of like a relational meeting with a client in person is that I'll talk to them about like, hey, what's your favorite TV show or whatever. And then the next time I see them on a Zoom call, I'll find that my ability to communicate them about all the other stuff is suddenly better just because I know them a little bit more in a more kind of human relational way.
I think about like how stupid like inside jokes are as a form of relational development. But like we can all make a little joke. Like I think about the team that came out from Crop Shop from Australia, and like that was one of their first times in America. And so one of the things that we did is that they had like never seen a Cybertruck. Apparently, in Australia there aren't Cybertrucks. I don't know. Get over there, Elon. Whatever. But one of the people like had one, and they thought it was literally hilarious. They asked if they could do a photo shoot in it and take pictures. And they said when they pulled up at first, they thought the military was there. And so there's this like little thing that we'll be able to use all the time as a fun connection point. Or now my like ongoing joke is like, how can I give them the most American experience ever? And so we took them to Disneyland. They're like, all you have to do now is just get me the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders and we're set, But that's like an example of like, we've never conversed that way, So I think there's just so much opportunity to know and build with people in a way that, is super valuable. And so go and visit your vendors. That's my push to brands. And then agencies, like create space for people to come see them, invest the money. The other thing is like, dude, we're still meeting our team members for the first time. Like, like Taylor on your team is new. She was there for the first time. She was apparently disappointed to find out I'm not as tall as she thought I was. I heard at dinner that got leaked by Corey, but yeah, like it's really cool to actually see these people who you have this like massive shared life experience with, but no real human connection.
Get mystery shopped for your brand and 2 competitors of your choice for free. Stored will provide a detailed report that outlines the specific areas you're outperforming your competitors and where your competitors are outperforming you. Learn how your consumers truly experience your brand today. Request your free report at stored.link/mystery. That's STORD.link/mystery. I was just going to say tangentially on the Australians visiting America thing, my favorite one of those is meeting British people who really want to drink out of red Solo cups because they don't have them in the UK, and that's what they see on TV.
Yeah,
it's just like this little thing that we're used to that they are just mythologized or something.
Well, you come to Orange County and like all we are is just this like giant meme of Laguna Beach, Real Housewives, and and everything else that they sort of have constructed in their heads about who we are. So it's kind of fun being a character to somebody. You're like, oh yeah, we'll play this up for you, see what we can do.
Totally.
But yeah, so there's that, and then like it got us a bunch of good feedback about the business experience that they're having. And I'll give you an example of one thing that just continues to just be really obvious to me is that businesses don't know how to handle the idea of creative volume. Like this is such a broadly distributed ideal, but it is so unclear how to actually systematize it. Is that it is so obvious to me that people conceptually have a sort of agreed, but don't know how to operationalize the idea. And candidly, I it's one of the things we struggle with entirely too. It's really actually a hard concept to figure out how to design a system that's going to output for you a consistent set of diverse quality of creative. And I think it's very clear that it's like an under-resourced part of systems still by a lot. And so that it's like helping me think about the shape of our service and SOWs and things like that. So these are all important pieces of discovery, of seeing a bunch of people in one place at once and watch what they respond to. Like as we go through a topic and we bring up X, and then you can kind of get a sense of the response. The other thing that always is surprising to me is we always do a session on like leadership or employee development and like how much that's a big pain and how much people want to talk to each other, especially in safe spaces, about their challenges with their employee bases and things like that. Like it's just, there's these certain nerves that you can watch get touched in person. Whereas when I send an email or do a podcast, the feedback isn't the same. I might get a couple of comments on YouTube, a couple of you might send an email, but I can literally watch a nerve get touched in the crowd and go, ooh, that's like thing. Okay, there's more there for us to go after.
I'm curious to dig into that a little bit more, just about the nerves that were touched. So obviously you mentioned creative volume, and you mentioned just sort of like general like leadership and organizational construction, that type of thing. So maybe unpack, especially that second one a little bit, like without any naming names or any specifics or whatever. Like what did you feel like were the biggest pain points or struggles across our clientele around, let's say, leadership?
Yeah, it's funny. It's in the same way that saying like make a lot of creative is important. People like have A players on your team is like another thing. It's like, okay, sure. And so Dane does this really good job of sort of extracting out an honest response to, are there people in your head right now that he uses this framework of like detractors versus advocates? And can you in your mind sort of picture and break your employee base into these groups? 2s, 3s, and 5s is like this metaphor that he'll use, the rule of 10. Look it up if you can ask ChatGPT if you want to understand more about that. But the point is just like people very quickly can do that. They can have in their minds the groups of employees that are like really meaningfully contributing and impactful to the organization, those that are kind of in the middle, and those that are like detractors that are actually pulling the organization away. And we have this, I say we now, I'm sort of lumping myself into this cohort of founders or people in managers or in charge of it, groups of humans, that you like allow this thing to persist that is like so obviously like it's not benefiting them, it's not benefiting us, but it just, there's this like story you make up about why it needs to continue. And I think everybody has that experience. And so it's a very shared experience amongst leaders to be dealing with those kinds of problems. Whereas like the incrementality of YouTube may not matter to a CEO because they're the product person who's there, or they're into finance. Like those topics don't kind of land in the same way as like human management issues amongst leaders are pretty broadly shared. And so I think you see that come to life in that kind of setting.
Yeah, that's interesting. And also, I think given, some of the conversations I've had on this podcast with various entrepreneurs and leaders, is that it seems to me like the biggest unlock of all of this is figuring that out, like figuring out your relationships with your employees, your relationship with your org structure, having everybody own something, having clear responsibilities, that type of thing. In some ways, yeah, that's going to be significant. I mean, it is significantly more important than any sort of smaller tactical thing that we can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, probably a topic for a bigger episode, but I think that it might be true that the biggest fundamental flaw of founders and CEOs is the how important they make themselves in the lives of their people, and how that affects their ability to manage them honestly. And it's like it masquerades as empathy and kindness, but it's really ego. And like that's like I think a huge problem.
Yeah, totally. So this would be like the situation where the CEO, let's say, has a team of people around them whose job is to just manage their mood or something like that, as opposed to creating a system where people can be transparent with the guy on the top. Is that essentially what you're talking about here?
And I think that let's say you have somebody that's like underperforming and you're kind of afraid to let them go because you think you're like really important to them, and that this job is so important to them, and that like if they don't have you, they will be like destitute or lost.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is like you're actually like the organization are totally replaceable in the same way most employees are. Like there are lots of jobs. These people are competent, they're talented, they land on their feet most of the time. And in fact, they'll probably go somewhere where they're thriving because they won't be unhappy, or they won't have the distrust that they have with you, or you might be failing to manage them appropriately in lots of ways. And so those kinds of relational dynamics, like I just have overplayed my importance in the person's life a lot of times. And CTC is, I'd like to think it's a special place. Like, I feel good about it, but in reality, there are like innumerable companies in the world that do good things. And so it is just not implausible that someone could find a better option for themselves. And that if I'm dissatisfied and they're dissatisfied, that relationship doesn't need to persist. It's a lot like dating in that way, where it's like, if we break up, we actually both might be better off. And that happens more often than I thought it would initially, because I thought I was like really special and really important. If you lost me, it'd be really bad for you. But
well, probably a topic deserving of its own episode.
Yeah.
To jump back to the summit, like any other kind of, like you say, like key sort of like pressure points or moments where everybody's eyes lit up, kind of anything else, any other takeaways there to highlight?
Yeah, I think the creative thing, like I said, it continues to be this question of just, and I've talked about this before, maybe on the podcast or not, but the reality is like we designed a legacy set of infrastructure inside of consumer businesses in particular for design production that don't meet the modern playbook. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've just realized is that like, if you think about design inside of especially larger, like a consumer enterprise brands, like the system used to be sort of like there's a design request that could be for a point of sale display. It could be for like a packaging insert. It could be for a magazine ad. It could be for a television ad. It could be for a Facebook organic post, or it could be for a Facebook ad. And those are all sort of just like design tasks that go into the queue and come out the other side when the available design resources have time to do it. And a lot of design infrastructure got built that way, like a lot of it. And the reality is like now take that system and jam in an ideology that says like make 500 ads a month that are completely diverse and need to be live really fast. And like they just like ram into each other over and over, and there's no amicable solution. And the reality is that what I think about the creative needs of the modern media playbook for advertising is it shouldn't be likely single source, is that diversity is really hard for one person to create. This is actually another thing I'm learning all the time, is that as much as I could try to create a bunch of different ideas, the reality is that my worldview and bias lends itself towards a specific POV all the time. And it's usually my own. And so I could try to think about designing rain gear for someone who lives in Seattle, and I could think about what it might be like to live in Seattle. I could go study or read or think about what other people say, but that will flow naturally out of a different source, I think, of someone who has that lived experience. And so there's something about the actual diversity of the production pipeline in terms of how many different people do you have making things for you that actually helps to solve the problem of both volume and diversity. And so I think there's some things about how the system needs to be reconstructed to be pulling creative from lots of different sources, and how you should build a pricing model that allows you to do that I think is part of the solution that just hasn't been broadly circulated. And it shouldn't be that CTC is the sole solution, and it shouldn't be that your internal team is the sole solution. I actually think this is a more collaborative process required to get to where people are trying to go.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the ideal would be something like you brief out an ad concept and it goes to 500 people, each of whom create you one ad, or something along those lines. You get 500 different takes, different perspectives, different, I don't know, formats, something along those lines. Right?
Yeah, that's like the extreme version of it. I think that's why creator content is like sort of this really good vehicle for that, because that's fundamentally what it's doing. Is it's like sourcing from a varying group of creators. Whereas when you go into your design system, there's like one designer. Like, so it's like the opposite. You're asking one person to make 50 ads versus 50 people to make one ad. And like those two different system designs, I think, are a big shift in how things occur. And I think the world is moving closer to the 50 and 1 or 50 and 5 versus the 1 and 250. And I think that's a big shift for how a lot of these organizations are built.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, I think if there's anything else that you want to hit from in terms of summit takeaways, observations.
I think we're going to move it to twice a year. If you are interested in being a part of it, the other thing we want to try and do is we want to try and bring a little bit of potential client into this experience too, overlapping, because I think it's really important to think about your experience with your agency as a partnership, as a relationship, and to get a sense of what the relationship with CTC would be like. That's interesting to you. We'd love to chat about it. I think it's a really cool way to investigate us, and to see other clients, talk to them. Don't got to talk to us. You can talk to them, to meet the other employees. So you don't just hear from Taylor. A lot of people want to meet the team, right? And so if you think about the sales process, that's like, okay, here comes, Brian Sikansky onto a call and he's going to talk for 45 minutes. And it's like, okay, did you really learn a whole lot in that process? I always think it's kind of weird when people are like, I want to meet the team first. It's like, is your actual capacity to interview them right now like really high? Like, are you really going to get something substantive out of this conversation? But I think that is a space where you could actually sit at dinner next to the people you're going to potentially work with and get to know them a lot, ask them questions, see how they think. So I think there's a lot of reasons why those kinds of spaces as a potential customer could be really valuable too. So just more stuff we're thinking about. Yeah, creative is a pain. I think the general sense is that one of the things we hit on a lot, and if you listened to the speech last week, is that like I believe we're in a recessionary environment for consumer products. And the way to win in that environment is to not pull back. It's to be courageous and push forward. And that takes some confidence and clarity. And so how do you create that clarity and that leverage to do it? That's what we're after. And I think we're going to keep on those themes for a bit.
Yeah, cool. Well, if you want to join us for the next one, this is one way to put it. Check us out. You know where to find us, commentthereco.com. Hit that hire us button. We would love to have a conversation about how we could potentially work together. All right, folks, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Take care, everyone. We will see you next time.